Hi, everybody. Welcome back. As the title suggests, we're going to be joined later by Alex Ioannidis. You've seen him before, mainstream GOP type of guy. He's kind of on his way home or something. But I did want to cover a couple other topics. So this is going to be a live stream concerning some other issues that have cropped up today. First of all, I'm going to pull this up, but if you have been following the Facebook issue, where they've been trying to connect ads purchased by Russia on Facebook to rigging the election, I think you're going to get a nice kick out of this. You're really going to laugh. Thanks for joining us. I sent this earlier to somebody else. It's from the Wall Street Journal. By the way, I might get kicked off, so I do have a second computer handy. But you can see this. I'm about to share the screen. Here we go. It says you can't buy the presidency for $100,000. And it says Russia didn't win Trump the White House any more than China reelected Bill Clinton in 1996. Now, you might think that this is some sort of deflection by some Republican or, Steve Bannonite, even though it's the Wall Street Journal. Doubtful that they'd be looking to get any support from Steve Bannon. But the person who wrote this is Mark Penn. And actually, Mark Penn figures very heavily in the campaign, not of Hillary Clinton, but I believe the last campaign and past campaigns of Hillary Clinton and her husband, Bill. And he says the fake news about fake news is practically endless. Americans worried about Russia's influence in the 2016 election have seized on a handful of Facebook ads as though there weren't also 3 90-minute debates, 2 televised party conventions, and $2.4 billion spent on last year's campaign. The danger is that bending facts to fit the Russian storyline may nudge Washington into needlessly and recklessly regulating the internet and curtailing basic freedoms. After an extensive review, Facebook has identified $100,000 of ads that came from accounts associated with Russia. Assume for the sake of argument that Vladimir Putin personally authorized this expenditure. Given its divisive nature, the campaign could be dubbed "From Russia with Hate." Now, hold on, I'm going to put on my headphones because I know that some of you have been complaining about the audio when I don't have them on. So just hold on a second. I just remembered while I was doing this. Okay, I have my headphones on. Hopefully you guys could hear me anyway. Hey, Drayman Truth Seeker, thanks for tuning in. So analyzing the pattern of expenditures and doing some back of the envelope math, it's clear this was no devilishly effective plot. Facebook says 56% of the ads ran after the election, reducing the tally that could have influenced the result to about $44,000. It also turns out the ads were not confined to swing states, but also shown in places like New York, California, and Texas. Supposing half the ads went to swing states brings the total down to $22,000. So he does, and I'll share the link in the description, or not in the description. I'll put it in the chat right now. Okay, so you guys can go look there. It goes into more in-depth analysis of that. I'll put it in the description later after the video. There's really, I want to keep the moving parts to a minimum here because I am having problems with this computer. Like I said earlier, I might get kicked off by the computer. So I have my tablet here ready. And like I said, for those of you that have just joined, I'm supposed to be joined later by Alex Ioannidis, a friend of mine, kind of a odd person in some respects, but I think he's well intentioned. So what's the point of this article? You have here a guy who was featured. This is Dick Morris's book, Rewriting History. Now, Dick Morris, Mark Penn to the Clintons. Mark Penn was basically their top poll strategist and ad man for many of the campaigns. He was one of the most divisive people within the campaign, meaning that other people would fight with him. That's revealed in the book Game Change. I have that right over here. Okay. And he's basically saying, as somebody who's raised and bundled, tens of millions of dollars, or has used that money, that $100,000, even if you accepted those points at face value, $100,000 doesn't make a lick of shit in an election. Okay, it doesn't make a difference. And let me see if I can find. There was something else he said here. Okay, he brings up a hilarious parallel, and I think that I'm going to try to interpret what he was trying to say here after I read it to you. He says, no one wants foreign governments meddling in American elections. In 1996, the Chinese government had the China Plan and pumped hundreds of thousands of dollars in Bill Clinton's re-election campaign. There were congressional investigations and several fundraisers were prosecuted, but Attorney General Janet Reno rejected calls for an independent counsel. Campaigns tightened up their donor validation procedures and life moved on. The same is called for here. Internet companies should improve their screening of electioneering ads, impose clearer standards on all ads, and do a better job weeding out phony accounts. Now, what he raises here is something that has been completely ignored in the midst of this Russia collusion story, which is that the Clintons in 1996 were connected to a donor named James Riady. I think I have a book that, this is what's good about this new work area that I have with the library, is that I have virtually everything within a hand's reach. So this is Ron Brown's Body. So I've already shown you 3 books today that I've read all 3 of them. And if you want this one's probably the most. If you're one of those kind of Alex Jones people, this is. I mean, Alex Jones is probably would agree with this, but this is like documented facts. This was a cabinet member that was killed in a plane crash. Ron Brown, the former chair of the DNC, by the way, who was Bill Clinton's Commerce Secretary. He died in a plane crash in 1995 or 96, I believe, in Croatia. Very suspicious circumstances. And he was connected to a donor named John Huang. And John Huang was this mysterious Chinese national who was linked with these bankers named the Mokhtar brothers and James Riady. These were these Indonesian Chinese people that were donating just insane amounts of money to the Clintons, often in cash. So they were bringing envelopes full of cash to the Clintons in the run-up to the 1996 election. How's that for campaign financing scandals? Okay, that's never brought up nowadays. People don't talk. They want to talk about Russian collusion, and it's very funny today. Talking about Russia. Look, I'm not calling Russia an innocent country, but this has become such a ridiculous standard to always go to the Russia issue that Putin himself said, and he was laughing, I think it was an interview with Megyn Kelly, that it's basically like Russia is the Jews now. It's like that's the new anti-Semitism, anti-Russianism. And I think he was making a joke, and I'm Jewish, I don't take offense to the joke. I think it was hilarious. I think he's right. You cannot blame Vladimir Putin for every issue that you're having. and it's very obvious from Penn's piece here in the Wall Street Journal that even some people in Clinton land, in the very the center, the deep state people, which Mark Penn is usually working for, they're starting to admit that this scandal doesn't really have much substance to it. It's a scandal that's not a scandal. First of all, he went through the sums of money. They're small, even if it was $100,000. Some of it was after the actual campaign, and some of it was not even in swing states. And this isn't sophisticated advertising. In many cases, it's just a bunch of bullshit stories that don't have anything to do with the election. I think one of the cases that was revealed had to do more with Black Lives Matter, which, take it or leave it, I don't think that's really a Donald Trump issue, or wasn't during the campaign. That was more of like an issue that transcended party lines. Either you were for that group or you were against it. And yet, I think about a week or two ago, I saw Mark Warner, the Democratic ranking member on the Senate Oversight Committee, or whatever committee it is that's looking into the Russian election hacking, and he was standing there looking like the fucking Tin Man, acting like they found a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's bullshit. $100,000, just like Mark Penn says, does not influence an election. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having people do these, star-studded fundraisers that have been going on for years. Why is it that Mark Penn is coming forward now? Well, I think that he's starting to realize that the string has run out for his business with the Clintons. They're not going to afford him any more work. It says that I think it says he was the chief strategist on Bill Clinton's 1996 presidential campaign. That's only after Dick Morris got fired for seeing a hooker, by the way. Hillary Clinton's 2000 Senate campaign and Mrs. Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign. I don't know if he had a role on the 2016 campaign, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Let me just look it up here. For some reason, I have Jimmy Garoppolo up. I was looking up these football players, but let me see here. No, he didn't. He wasn't even involved on the 2016 campaign. J-Man Truth Seeker says Jew power. Well, I don't know who you're referring to, but I actually just looked right now because everybody's thinking about it. Mark Penn is not Jewish, but Dick Morris is. So I guess what can I say? I mean, people are hooked up. I mean, I'm not hooked up. I gotta fucking fix that railing behind me. By the way, it's kind of not anchored well. So, I wish that was the case for all of us, but maybe one day I'll be able to strike it rich like good old Mark Penn. He was making hundreds of thousands of dollars, basically doing this bullshit for the Clintons for years. And back in the 90s, it was effective. But let me explain why he's coming forward. What he's not mentioning, he's talking about how it takes millions of dollars in order to swing a campaign, and now billions of dollars, because the Clinton campaign apparently raised more than $1 billion last cycle. What he's not mentioning is that that's starting not to be necessarily the case. People are not really tuning into TV anymore. If you haven't noticed, there's less advertising, there's less people that are buying into the old style of campaigning. I think people are more starting to formulate their political views through forums. Just like, I mean, on Reddit, on forums like this, YouTube. You could have Twitter, and now the alternate forums, which hopefully one day I'll get into. I'm not, I have a day job, so I'm not able to be a social media social media 24/7 guy, but you have Gab, you have 4chan, all these people um, who really influence the election. A lot of them have nothing to do with traditional TV advertising. They don't care. Those ads don't really make an impact on them. Um, the days of television political ads kind of coming to a close. They're more influencing older middle-aged voters who are still watching cable and obviously local TV, but are using mobile devices and they're looking at ads on a computer. Now notice that the censorship, those ads are being pulled from a lot of controversial sites and videos. So somebody like Mark Penn, why is he writing that article? Well, I think he is right in what he's saying, but think about it this way: he needs to justify his industry, and if he cannot sell ads, and there's nowhere to sell ads where people are looking at them, then he's out on his luck in terms of having a business to promote. Um, if people are not watching videos that are monetized, where you can get ad revenue and you see ads for, I don't know, candidate A, Joseph Biden. Let's say Biden runs in the next election, but people aren't watching videos that are monetized on YouTube. They're watching Styx Hexenhammer, or they're watching H.A. Goodman, or they're watching Jimmy Dore. I think is kind of demonetized, although he is with TYT. If you're watching, RT, if those are being demonetized, then not going to get the amount of money from these candidates to run these ads, and that's why I think he's running that. Okay, next topic. Okay, I did want to talk a bit about the collusion lawsuit from Colin Kaepernick. I know some of you. Please comment in the chat. Are you tired of this topic, or do you think that there's still more to talk about? Let's see. J-Man Truth Seeker is really commenting a lot here. It says, "I'm speaking of our Jew power." Before I get to the next topic, I just want to read it. And I love your your railing. It reminds me of my grandfather's house. There are all kinds of black empowerment channels. Why not a Jew one? We need to back ourselves up just like we always have. Laughing out loud, man. I won't even watch Fox News for free on YouTube, and that's after I used to pay for it. Okay, actually, I didn't know J-Man was Jewish, but I welcome another Jewish viewer, even though I also welcome the other demographic, which is the non-Jews. So I welcome either of those two, because I'm inclusive. I'm all inclusive. I'm inclusive of both the Jew viewer and the non-Jew viewer. It's almost like I'm some sort of religious healing guy. I mean, isn't it true? I mean, actually, I haven't even mentioned religion on here, but I'm bringing together people of all religions, right? I mean, I'm assuming the two other viewers are Muslim and Christian. Let me just see here. I'm waiting for. I'm just waiting for Alex to come on. He was my guest today. I don't know if you guys have seen him before. Anyway, so the Colin Kaepernick collusion topic. So we might have to split that up if Alex comes on, but I want you guys to remember that. And if I don't get through it all, I might have to just do a separate stream on it. It's just I was waiting for him the whole evening, and I figured I'd start the stream and start talking about other topics. So listen, Colin Kaepernick is suing the NFL. Let me just pull up the story so I can get a few more of the details completely accurate here. This is from Bleacher Report. Let me show the screen here so you guys aren't just watching me read. It says here, Colin Kaepernick's collusion grievance to center on Donald Trump. So I don't think this is going to work for him. And you know, when I talk about Colin Kaepernick, obviously, let me just say up front, I don't agree with Colin Kaepernick, but I think that this is not nearly as important of a topic as people make it to be. It's become blown out of proportion because A, the media has hyped it up, B, Colin Kaepernick's supporters have hyped it up, and now Donald Trump has hyped it up. So there's a lot of people to blame. The quarterback has claimed teams colluded to keep him out of the league this season, and his recent lawsuit suggests Trump helped foster this negative culture toward him. In September, the president said NFL teams should fire players who take a knee during the national anthem, which Kaepernick had done since the start of last season. Trump followed up his thoughts with a series of tweets discussing those who kneel during the national anthem and recently stated these players should be suspended. Over 100 players took a knee in protest in week 3 following the original comments, while several around the league continue to protest racial injustice with this act. Kaepernick, who remains unemployed despite a quality individual season in 2016, planned to file a collusion lawsuit under the collective bargaining agreement, as first reported by Bleacher Report's Mike Freeman. While proving such an act could be difficult, La Canfora noted the plan to discuss Trump's role in influencing teams, noting his relationship with New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft and Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones. Mike Garagos, Kaepernick's lawyer, also hinted at the president's influence in the official statement. Athletes should not be denied employment based on partisan political provocation by the executive branch of government. So I'm not a lawyer, but I can give you a couple holes that are in this lawsuit, and then maybe a couple that are you know, pluses on his side. So let's go over the things that are to Kaepernick's benefit here. If they were to find any communications, let's say this lawsuit would subpoena the NFL, and they'd have to give over their communications between teams. Let's say between the GM of the Packers and the GM of the Chiefs, and there was to be a revelation that these people said, well, no, we're not going to hire Colin Kaepernick. Are you guys going to hire Colin Kaepernick? No, we're not going to hire him, and you know, you should also not hire him. I think that would be usable as evidence of collusion. I just invited Alex on, so he should be joining me in a second. Once he joins, we're going to have to shift topics. So I'm sorry for you guys if I got you kind of teased to this, but look, if Colin Kaepernick were to get evidence of that, I think that there would be grounds for the lawsuit, and then it's anybody's guess what would happen. There's some issues, though, with, you know, some of the things that have happened that are circumstances that would undermine his lawsuit. First of all, he did have a contract with the 49ers, and he gave it up. He opted out of the contract, which is his right. But once you opt out of a contract, there's no assurance that you're going to be offered a different contract by another team or by another employer. It's like if I was to quit my job at you know, there's only 3 companies that work in my industry. Okay, let me just talk about that. In my industry, there's only 3 companies that I know of that work in the same industry. If I was to, you know, go to my boss and say, oh, listen, I'm not coming back to work again. I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice, and then I was to apply to the 2 other companies and not get accepted, that's not evidence of collusion. Okay, that's near to what happened. Okay. Second of all, there is evidence that he did work out with the Seattle Seahawks, for example. There was a workout with them, I think, in either June or July. There were some Seahawks players who wanted him to play for the team, but they didn't end up signing him. It's anybody's guess why. I think he would have been a good fit for the Seahawks, but he would have been a backup, first of all, because they already have a Super Bowl winning quarterback, Russell Wilson, who, and really the slot where they needed more help was not quarterback; it was offensive line. So I think it's odd that he didn't get signed there. I think Seattle was about as good of a landing spot as any for him because they have a progressive community there. Let me see some of J-Man's comments. He's really chatting up a storm here. J-Man, try to get some of these other people to. I don't see anybody else chatting here, but it says I've given up on the NFL, even though my father and I enjoy it. Well, this is our religion and our tribe, correct? With Aaron Rodgers' collarbone injury, how can I possibly get excited about the NFL? Yeah, good point. Then there's another issue with Colin Kaepernick. He also apparently he was negotiating with the Baltimore Ravens, and his girlfriend tweeted out a comment that it had a degrading portrayal of the owner, Steve Bisciotti, and Ray Lewis, who's the Hall of Fame linebacker for the Ravens, probably one of the best defensive players of the past 20 years. No, there's a real issue there for Colin Kaepernick, where he has to then answer for what's going on with his personal life. If his girlfriend is doing this, and NFL owners, they know that in some cases you have to deal with the family of the player, and that's well documented. If the player has family trouble, Des Bryant case, for example, they up front asked Des Bryant at one point if his mother had ever been, I think, a prostitute. I think the Miami Dolphins did that. When NFL teams scout players, they scout a lot of tangential issues in their lives. The issues of their household, of their habits, addictions, maybe even attitude. And with Colin Kaepernick, how many red flags do you have there? Now, I'm not trying to say that he couldn't, on an individual level, be successful on a team, but you do have to deal with the issue of his surrounding entourage, which mainly his girlfriend, who has just been making more and more mountains in his path to going back to the NFL. This is a woman who, I think a week ago, there was a fake news report that Colin Kaepernick, I think it was from NBC, they reported that Colin Kaepernick would now be standing for the anthem. And his girlfriend came out immediately with a tweet that said, no, he's not going to be standing for the anthem. Well, if you're being led around on basically like with a leash by this crazy girlfriend who's also a celebrity, I think many NFL teams would look at this and say, no, we're not going to. I'm being joined by Alex right now, so we're gonna have to cut away. Alex, let me just finish this topic for a second. I'll be right with you. So we're gonna come back to the collusion issue, Colin Kaepernick collusion. But briefly, the issue that I'm seeing here is that you do have to go and prove that you'd never had a chance and that the NFL denied you any opportunity to join one of their teams. And that's not what happened here. There were teams that gave him tryouts, and there was a team that there apparently was a team that gave him a serious offer. So yeah, I think that this lawsuit will be thrown out in the end. There's unless, like I said, they do discover that there was material, communications between one team or another that showed that the NFL was trying to deny them deny Colin Kaepernick a spot on the roster. So that's it. We're gonna switch topics now. I have Alex back. Alex was just well, you were watching the Colts Titans game.
Yeah, but I was downtown, and so I came back now.
Okay, yeah, I think you told me you had to drive somewhere, but anyway, so the topic today, and I think we put it off a couple times because I wasn't available and he wasn't available. We had John McCain, Bob Corker, and I think the juiciest topic would probably be the NAACP. But which one do you want to do first, buddy?
Well,
I know
this is the NAACP. Let's start with the two senators.
Okay, so you said you want to do the two senators first?
Yeah.
So anyway, Alex, you've been saying very often now you call yourself a Republican. I don't belong to any party. I think the parties are basically failures on a total level. But you keep saying that John McCain is a true American hero. Now, please explain, given his record in government, why you still think that. What are his main accomplishments in your mind?
To be fair, I've also been disappointed with McCain the last year, but I will tell you why he's a hero. If we go back to Vietnam, that man was a war hero, was captured and tortured, and he fought for America. That's what the man has done his entire life. But we move on, and he joins Congress in the early 80s and then becomes a senator in the late 80s, replacing Barry Goldwater. And I just really appreciate the way he's always tried to unite the country, bring people together. He's known for bipartisanship. He's known for putting country above party, which I think is a good thing. And my favorite accomplishment of his was the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act of 2002.
Yeah, but as you know, okay, so let's divide those two. So you mentioned bipartisanship, and then you mentioned the campaign finance reform.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, since then, because of the way that it was written and the way that and the Supreme Court ruling in Citizens United, no, campaign finance reform has still been a murky water where both parties are just basically influenced by lobbyists and large special interests. So
right.
Why would you say that that was a success?
It slowed down their influence, and it was a step in the right direction.
I don't think it is at all. And if you look at the Republican Party, let's leave the Democrats aside for a second, because we're talking about John McCain, and maybe in a few minutes I'll look at the chat. Can you see the chat, by the way?
No, I can't.
Okay, so
I normally have it pulled up, but I just turned on my laptop and clicked the link. I didn't see anything else.
Yeah, that's okay. But anyway, the issue with lobbyists is that the Republican Party, it's been under the influence of corporate lobbyists for decades. Pharmaceutical industry, the defense contractors, oil contractors. Don't you think that it's odd that you say campaign financing was reformed under John McCain? Even Donald Trump, who people say he shook up Washington, he appointed Elaine Chao. He appointed Rex Tillerson. These are all lobbyist dreams. An oil czar. That I think.
Do you think they have conflicts of interest?
Conflicts of interest.
Resigned from ExxonMobil, and he's cleaned up the State Department. He's cut half the jobs there and cut all the waste. He's run it like a business. He's one of the best cabinet members. Well, Chao is McConnell's wife. She was an olive branch petition to Mitch McConnell. That's the reason she got appointed.
So yeah, I think we're on the same page with Chao, but I'd say that Tillerson, yes, I'd agree that he's done a few things to clean up administratively the State Department, but this is a person who he's clearly gone and defended oil interests especially with regards to the policy with Venezuela. And he spoke, I think, a day ago, yesterday, saying that the U.S. should stay in the deal with Iran. Now, we don't know. This could be
Was
just
that
he's playing
Tillerson or Mattis that said that?
Tillerson.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think that John McCain's bill has had any influence. I think if you're talking about in Congress, we're still having congressmen who are bought and sold by, energy interests, by the defense contractors, and that's just on the GOP side. I'm not even getting to the Democrats, because we're
Yeah.
not talking about Democrats at the
Teacher
moment.
unions.
Teachers unions. You have Planned Parenthood,
Yeah.
other organizations, and I have to say that of all the things that he calls an accomplishment, I don't think that it's the same as they say that Dodd-Frank. The Democrats say, "Oh, Dodd-Frank, it's
No.
cleaned up the finance industry." No,
It's helped the tycoons of the finance industry grow while everybody else can't start a business.
So then the other issue that you mentioned is that John McCain is a bipartisan guy, and I mean, what does that even mean? Why is there an advantage to being bipartisan in your mind?
Unifying, we can work together, find common ground, and move forward. That's what Kasich always talks about.
Okay, let's leave John Kasich out of here, because I can't focus on two targets at the same time. But the John McCain, if you look at his record, and I just you can find the review on my channel, but Game Change. This is written by the media, but obviously the media, but two liberal journalists. They document that John McCain was so bipartisan that Hillary Clinton was set to be one of his best friends in the Senate when they were both in the Senate. He was so bipartisan that he suddenly got stunned that during the 2008 campaign, suddenly SNL and the New York Times weren't treating him like their buddy anymore. So why do you think that? Don't you think that there's an illusion that there is really an honest discourse in this country? Because these journalists, they're there to push their corporate agenda. Doesn't matter whether it's liberal or conservative. So, in my opinion, his bipartisanship is really kind of a scarecrow. It doesn't attract anybody from either side. It doesn't attract people on the right. It doesn't attract people on the left. He's kind of this no man's land on the political spectrum.
You've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. We need to find common ground. We need people in Congress who will take people from the right and take people from the left and bring them together and lead a movement to common ground. McCain has done that historically.
Why would you? I mean, don't you? Do you know how many examples I could find of bipartisan legislation that have been horrible ideas, but they were common ground? I mean, FDR, he put Japanese Americans in internment camps. That had bipartisan support. Don't you think that that's enough of an indication? And you could say, oh, that's a bad example, but bipartisan support. What's the advantage of it?
I can give you examples of good bipartisan support too.
I mean, throw them out.
Okay, look at the 90s when Clinton was president and Gingrich held the House and how they worked together. That whole presidency, you were able to sign everything from the Defense of Marriage Act to balancing a budget.
Yeah, that's an example of a guy, Bill Clinton, who sold his party out in order to get succeed.
He didn't really sell them out. He
absolutely sold them out.
Democrats loved Bill Clinton.
They loved him because they're idiots.
But he didn't sell them out though. Like, people were happy with him. Democrats were happy with him, and Republicans from the South were too.
What happened was, and you can read in Hillary Clinton's biography, Living History, and the parody of Living History, Rewriting History, by Dick Morris. I'm doing this a lot today. I have my library behind me. All this entire shelf here. I don't know if I showed you this before.
That's the one I'm working on.
Yeah, I think you showed me that, or no, you showed it on one of your posts. Yeah. Anyway, the Clintons decided to do welfare reform and it directly stabbed in the back their biggest supporters. The Children's Defense Fund actually considered it a betrayal. There's actually an account that Morris goes into where representatives went to her Senate office, and this was after she became a senator. So we're shifting to a different Clinton, where they asked for her to support certain pieces of legislation. She said, "No, I have to be able to, attract people from the middle and the right. I can't support your legislation." So what you're basically supporting is that John McCain can campaign as a conservative, which he did in 2010, I believe,
and 16. He campaigned this one.
Yeah, but he's a fraud. You cannot
He
campaign.
has not been good after 2016.
No, he hasn't been good. I'd argue. I wonder when he was good.
He killed
when was he good?
Killed that healthcare bill. He's being impractical. I would love a bipartisan solution to healthcare. I think that would.
But what is the bipartisan solution? That's what you never mentioned.
What
is it?
Graham Cassidy Heller was bipartisan before the media made it a big deal. I remember watching Susan Collins in the interview back in the middle of June saying, instead of just trying to repeal Obamacare, why don't they put out that bill proposed by Lindsey Graham and Bill Cassidy that had bipartisan support? Then comes September and she's against it.
No, but why was it a good bill? I mean, can you answer me that question? Why is it a good bill?
More power to the states and it releases a lot of the burdens of the federal government had on healthcare. It got rid of the individual mandate, which in itself is a huge issue.
Yeah, but getting rid of the individual mandate was already accomplished. Now, it was not legislatively, but by executive order.
When?
I think it was
this past week.
I think it was in February. Trump signed it.
No, individual mandate is still in place. Last I checked, wasn't it?
No, it's been now both the corporate and individual mandate, I believe, have been removed. And I'd like to, if there was a bipartisan bill, would you support it?
Likely. I honestly, this is what I would have done. This was the best approach. This is what Bob Corker said too. You repeal Obamacare with a 2-year buffer period to come up with something better. You do that, you have Obamacare repealed. It says to the Democrats, oh crap, Obamacare is gone. Maybe now we need to do something to help fix healthcare and we can work together. Because if Obamacare is still there, they have no incentive to work together.
No, I can't get on board with that. I think that if you look at certain bills that have been passed bipartisanly, I don't know if that's a word, but with bipartisan support.
Yeah.
Look at the authorization for use of military force.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2 weeks ago, Senator Paul, he was trying to pass a bill. He said, and full disclosure, I'm a huge senator. I like most of Senator Paul's ideas.
I like Rand Paul too.
I don't think that's a secret. But he said, I'm not telling you to vote against authorization of use of military force in Yemen, but you should at least put it up for a vote, because otherwise we're basically acting as if Congress should just wait for the president to go to war. And 98-2, they voted against his measure to table the measure. I think it was Bernie Sanders. So no, but I mean, it's not surprising. The fact is that you could have bipartisan support. I don't think is an advantage for everything. If they were to have a bill that would pass with bipartisan support requiring you to, make love to an ostrich every week, don't you think that
it's not always a good thing? But when you're trying to tackle a problem, it's good to work together. That's all.
No, but it's bipartisan. They're both ganging up on the ostrich.
That doesn't solve any problem. That just you don't just pass bipartisan bills for the heck of it. You shouldn't be passing that many bills.
But they do. That's the fact of the matter is, Alex, that you know and I know that there are bills that pass every day that don't attract media attention, that get bipartisan support. So there is bipartisanship. And that's the problem is, okay, and that's why I think John McCain is a problem, and Bob Corker, who I'm about to get to, is that they pretend that there is no bipartisanship, but when they're meeting over in the lobby, getting their egg salad sandwiches together, I don't think that there is a difference between Democrats and Republicans. The only difference is, how much can I cut up and how much can you cut up?
You have a point. They're all slaves to their lobbyists, which is why the BCRA was so important. It slowed that process down.
Well, I don't think that until the 2018 midterm that we're really going to see a legislative solution to anything that, that anything as far as the healthcare legislation. But how about?
We'll be lucky to get tax reform passed.
Yeah.
What'll probably happen with tax reform is Trump is going to make a deal with Schumer where you still have a bracket above 35% for the top earners, whatever that means. And then it goes down to 4 brackets. That's probably what'll happen. It's a silly plan that it says a lot without doing anything.
What you mean his tax plan?
Yes.
I think that is going to take a couple weeks for us to really see what that really will shake out, and then and I mean in terms of just what it says, because there's just such a disconnect between each side as far as what the tax plan does. If you listen to Paul Krugman, he practically acts like it's Godzilla burning down Tokyo. And then on the other side, people say, oh, it's the best thing since sliced bread. So Bob Corker, you wrote a piece. Let me pull it up. You wrote it in the Millennial Review. I'll put the link. It says, a Tennessean's response to Senator Bob Corker's decision not to run again. So verbally, would you like to state why is it that you think Corker was such a good senator for, you're from Tennessee, right?
Mm-hmm. Let me tell you what I appreciated most about him. He voted with a right to life 100% of the time. That is huge. He always voted with the NRA too. I don't know his exact score, but it was the NRA always supported him. He protected those rights. But that's the biggest thing. He was a deficit hawk. He would never vote for since I've been following him, he would never vote for anything that increased our deficit and didn't address our debt. And he wrote an op-ed saying that our debt was a bigger threat to our country than North Korea was. I appreciate a guy who will do that. And he even said, I won't vote for tax reform if it adds a dime to the deficit.
Okay, but at the same time, you do know how legislators are judged. They're not judged by how they vote on other people's pieces of legislation. They're judged more on how they proposed, bills that actually made a difference to the country. So can you
always.
Okay, so you're basically saying that you want a senator who will vote according to your belief system.
Hold on, yes, for the most part. I want a senator who will vote with me 80% of the time and one I can trust to do what's right. Corker did that. Now, or at least 80% of the time. It doesn't just have to be that. But they're not going to get every vote perfectly, but I know they're honorable people and I can trust them. That's what I loved about Corker. But keep in mind, when you say what has he gotten done, he was senator from 2007 to now, from January 2007. 2 years of that, did he have a Republican president, and they also had a Democratic House that tried to impede everything that the neutral Senate did and George Bush tried to do. The rest of the time, it was a Democratic supermajority pretty much. They got everything done. They got 60 votes in the Senate, and Obama shoved his agenda down everybody's throat. Corker couldn't really get his conservative pro-business legislator through that. After that, Republicans regained the House and then the Senate. Okay, but Obama was still president. He didn't let any of it happen. So Corker couldn't have done that much.
Of course he could have done something. You know what? You know how?
How?
Well, I mean, you just talked about McCain and bipartisanship. So you're saying that you like McCain because he's bipartisan, but then Bob Corker, if he was in the Senate for 12 years, and you have people on the Democratic side that are, I guess, let's take a guy like Ben Cardin, who is one of the quieter ones. You could go to them and say, "Hey,
bipartisan."
What? Who?
Cardin.
Okay, maybe you know more.
Let's talk about partisanship. this is the other thing. The biggest thing with partisanship is that it wasn't that bad until 2010, when the Tea Party took over and said we will obstruct everything. That's when it started. Now the Democrats are doing the exact same thing with their resistance movement.
No, I don't think that I think that the Tea Party, what it did, and I think the Tea Party was ultimately a failure, but you were getting kind of a Tea Party 2.0 with Steve Bannon.
And that's disturbing.
No, why would it be disturbing? You have a party
Steve Bannon is a disturbing figure.
Okay, let's get to Steve Bannon in a second, but if you have a party that they go to the Senate and they say we are going to, they run on a platform saying we're going to repeal Obamacare. They don't repeal Obamacare. They run for office saying we're going to cut funding for Planned Parenthood. They don't cut funding for Planned Parenthood.
They can't. They need 60 votes.
They were able to do it through reconciliation. They ran on for example, Bob Corker. He said for years he was saying, "Oh, I'm going to vote against the Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act." What he ended up, well, he facilitated, as Senate Foreign Relations Committee chairman, a way for the act to pass anyway, so he can.
But he voted against it.
It doesn't matter, because he what you're missing is that the vote itself doesn't mean shit. Just like John Kerry, he said that I voted for the war so that I could vote against it with the Iraq War. That's where you get these senators that they can point to the voting record. They point to the voting record and say, hey, I did vote against it. But what they actually end up doing is they leverage other people. They find a way for themselves to appear to be supporting something when they're actually opposing it, and vice versa. So what Bob Corker did was he was basically, and there's a whole article from The Hill that I could send you.
I'd love to read it.
Where him and Ben Cardin, they worked out a way for the Iran nuclear deal to pass, and for Bob Corker to vote against it. And for look, when you have,
so you're saying Corker actually wanted the Iran deal to pass, but wanted it to look like he didn't?
Yeah, I don't think he cared either way whether the deal passed or not, as long as he got whatever he wanted from his I mean, I have it here. It's from The Hill. Bob Corker, Ben Cardin. The point I'm trying to say is that here, Politico, April 14th, it says how Cardin and Corker clinched the Iran deal, and it goes through the whole sequence of how you know, they both needed something. I forgot what Ben Cardin needed, but you know, these people are gamesmen. They don't really believe in anything. None of these politicians. I mean, I'd probably include Trump in it if, you know, this is a guy with a tremendous ego. He's doing a lot of the things he wants just because he doesn't care about anybody else. But Bob Corker is pretty much the same as all these other politicians in the Senate. They're just little puppets serving their interests. Some of them are you know, puppets of the gas industry. Some of them of unions, and some of them of pharmaceuticals. And in fact, you know, he cooperated very closely with Ben Cardin. So yeah, he was bipartisan in working out a way with the Democrats to get this signature treaty that Barack Obama wanted signed, put through Congress, and that's what you get from him. That's basically the results that you get from him. And I'd really like to know exactly what his justification for it was. He put up some sort of post a couple days ago that, oh, I wasn't really responsible for the Iran nuclear deal. Well, plenty of people on both sides of the aisle said that he was.
I need to look more into it. I don't know that much about it. I just know that he voted against it. I think it's a fair criticism to say that he didn't do enough to stop the Iran deal from happening. But in the end, he voted against it.
It doesn't matter. Here, I'll read this paragraph here. But as Cardin was moving the bill to the left, Corker was working aggressively to keep Republicans at bay. He spoke extensively to Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who wanted the Iran deal to win approval by 2/3 of the Senate, much like a treaty. Corker tried to appease the concerns of Johnny Isaacson of Georgia, who was seeking compensation for American victims of the 1979 Iranian hostage crisis. In the Senate basement, he had a lengthy conversation with Senator Cory Gardner about eliminating a certification requirement, a concession that angered some Republicans. And he went and lobbied other Republicans in order to find a way to make this bill workable for President Obama, so that he wouldn't need. So, for those of you that have joined late, or that and you also joined late, Alex, because I was on here earlier, but I wasn't talking about the deal anyway. When a treaty needs to pass through the Senate, it needs 2/3 approval.
Right.
Corker did. He basically reversed that. He said that in order to reject the treaty, you need 2/3 to disapprove. So exactly how does that help the cause of scuttling the bill? He can vote against, and then he can get however many they didn't even need full Democratic support. There were a number of Democrats that voted against the bill too, and it still passed. So what he did was he made his own vote meaningless.
It sounds to me, from what I've read so far, again, I need to look into this more, but it sounds a lot like Corker was trying to create a deal with Iran that was actually good, and then because it ended up not being anything good, he ended up voting against it in the end. That's what it sounds a lot like.
Well, why would he make it so that? So what exactly does he accomplish by making it so that the vote itself depends on there being a 2/3 majority in order to reject the treaty, and then you don't even need full Democratic support? There were only 41 members of the Senate that voted for the treaty, okay, and they were all Democrats. So in this case, there was bipartisan opposition to the deal, but thanks to Corker's measure, it made it so that didn't even matter. So
how does that measure happen? That doesn't make sense.
I put the, by the way, for those of you watching, I put the article.
I have this article. I need to read it.
Well, I put it in the chat. So
okay, I have it. I pulled it up just here. But
in any case, Bob Corker, like I said, he's somebody who's been in the Senate, or you said actually, he's been in the Senate for 12 years. I made a response post to yours, talking about Corker's actual sponsored legislation. He sponsored a bill that required online sellers to collect and remit sales and use taxes to the state in which the sales took place. So he basically made it easier for you to get taxed while you're doing internet commerce. So that's a bill that he's co-sponsored. He voted no on giving DC voting rights in the U.S. House. Okay, so they would have gotten a representative in the House.
That's partisanship.
Well, no, it's not, because Utah would have gotten another seat too. So I don't see why they wanted to deny. And I don't care about. I actually hate DC because
DC would be a rubber stamp for the Democrats.
Yeah, but you get another seat in Utah, it cancels out. He removed the Buy American clause of 2009. That's an interesting one.
Very pro-globalization.
What's that?
He's very pro-globalization.
So you're saying that it's a good idea. First of all, this is so the government, just so we can be clear, the government can buy for its procurement needs. If you're like an office in the Department of Agriculture office in New Hampshire, they're able to buy staplers or staples made in Quebec or whatever instead of in New Hampshire. So that's all it does. It just makes it possible for the government to waste more money buying foreign things.
If it's cheaper.
Well, there's no guarantee that it's cheaper.
That's what they should do. They should make not guarantee, but they should have a rule that requires them to buy what's cheapest. That lowers the cost for us.
Well, I can tell you,
government wastes a lot of money. I'm not looking at them as a role model for efficiency.
They don't look for the lowest price. I used to work for a business that we tried to get procurement contracts, and often they were saying, you guys should put in a little even a higher price because they wanted it to look like, for example, that they were pumping money into whatever industry it was. In our case, it was lighting. So I think that was a dumb bill. He voted against auditing the Fed in 2010.
Really?
So
I'm
yeah.
curious his reasoning for all of this. The one vote with Corker that bothers me, I believe he voted to bail out Wall Street, and I didn't like that.
Yeah, I think
I haven't really followed him since after 2014. That's the thing.
So okay, I think that personally, and this is where I'm getting to Steve Bannon. Every once in a while, you need some sort of movement to clean out the garbage in the Senate, in the House. I think that Steve Bannon is leading one of those movements. There's other movements on the left that are doing that. I saw yesterday that Dianne Feinstein in California, she's facing a primary challenger.
Yeah, isn't it a guy that like came here illegally or something?
No, I think like half his family is like illegal, but he's not illegal. But anyway, my point is, when you have frauds that are just in the Senate for so long and they don't even I mean, first of all, you didn't name any pieces of legislation that he actually sponsored. So my yardstick is this: if you're in the Senate for 12 years and you can't point to one measure that you put in that went through that really made a difference, then yeah, it's time for the other people in your party or in your camp, whatever you want to call it, they need to kick you out. And that's exactly what he got, and he got what he deserved. And when he leaves next year, I think that he's going to go away and people aren't going to miss him.
I'll miss him. Tennessee likes him.
So Alex is going to miss Bob Corker.
He would have won 70% of the vote if he ran for re-election here, by the way.
In the primary?
He would probably get about 55% of the vote in the primary.
Well, then why didn't he run for re-election?
Because he's told us he was only going to run for 2 terms.
Yeah, but he announced that he was retiring the day after the Senate candidate in Alabama lost.
That had nothing to do with it.
It had nothing to do with it. It's like...
Trust me, Corker is popular. I know my state.
Okay, I've seen the chat rooms, and he's not popular. He's not popular on either side of the aisle.
There were 2 polls. There was one that said...
Don't talk to me about polls, because you know how unreliable polling has been in the past.
I know polls are unreliable, but they do give you a general hint of an idea of what's going on. Like they're not.
No, if he was truly popular, then he wouldn't be running away with his tails between his legs now. He basically announced, in the middle of 2017, his plans. I think that he's basically weaseling out, and he's pretending, oh, I'm keeping my pledge to not to.
Pledge.
Yeah, he's being forced to keep
Trump
his pledge.
Was going to help him get reelected too. Trump encouraged him to run again, despite his tweets.
Yeah, he encouraged him to run again so that Trump could stab him in the back.
I doubt that.
Why would Trump need him in the Senate?
Because Corker has helped Trump. He hasn't voted against Trump in anything significant. He voted to repeal and replace Obamacare. He supported Graham Cassidy. I mean, he supported the initiatives Trump is trying to do.
Yeah, but he's publicly one of these idiots that every time Trump says anything, he says, here, I'm looking at this headline. It says, Corker, I got to believe I'll talk to the president again, whatever the fuck that means. This is a guy here. I have a timeline. This is from CNN. It says, April 28th, Corker won't endorse Trump, but says he supports him. Then he had a good meeting. Then he said he's in the mix for Secretary of State. Then he said...
That was accurate.
What?
That was correct. He was trying to be Secretary of State.
Then he said that the White House is in a downward spiral. Then on August 17th, Trump hasn't demonstrated the stability or competence to be successful. I mean, who is he to say anything? Bob Corker, a guy who hasn't accomplished anything in the Senate, and he's criticizing the guy who outsmarted his entire party and whooped their asses. I think that whatever you want to say about Donald Trump, if you want a party that can criticize Donald Trump, I'd have to say Bob Corker wouldn't be the guy.
Let me tell you this. After this past election is the only time you can really judge Republicans for what they have or haven't done. And that's because they never had a majority in anything. And even now we're having real trouble because of Collins, Murkowski, and McCain, who are just stalwart. Like they're
those are the Republican Party. They do represent the party as it truly is. Not they campaign as something else, and then when the campaign's over,
something else. This you could, besides McCain, you could see this was coming from Murkowski and Collins.
No, Lisa Murkowski actually said several times during the campaign that she would vote to repeal Obamacare. In fact, she voted in 2015 to repeal Obamacare on straight repeal.
Let me tell you a story about Lisa Murkowski. She was appointed senator by her dad, right? You know this, right?
Yeah.
Her dad was governor of Alaska. It was 2004. She won her first re-election. After that, she was running again in 2010, and she got primaried by a guy named Joe Miller. Well, Joe Miller, he beat her by like 4,000 votes. It was a very, very close race. So Murkowski didn't know what to do. Well, I think it was September of 2010, where she said she would run a write-in campaign. She was able to get the Democratic nominee to become irrelevant. She pandered to all the Democrats in Alaska and a few moderate Republicans that had her back, and she won a write-in campaign in a three-way race with 39% of the vote. So at that point, she became way more moderate because her base had just become a group of moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans. In 2016, the exact same thing happened. Dan Sullivan told Joe Miller that he was going to primary her, so Joe Miller didn't do it. Well, Dan Sullivan withdrew from the race a day after Joe Miller his deadline to file to be on the Republican ballot came out. Dan Sullivan is not the Alaska senator. It's another guy named Dan Sullivan who was mayor of Anchorage, just to clarify. So Dan Sullivan and Murkowski were in it together, and she was basically being a snake to make sure Joe Miller couldn't do it. So then Joe Miller convinced the Libertarian Party to let him run on their ticket and be like a social conservative. And again, he split half the real radical conservative vote. But the Democrat in Alaska in 2016, Margaret Stock, got like 12% of the vote. So Murkowski won a four-way race. There was another independent too, with 44% of the vote. So it was, her base is moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans. You never expected her to be like a hardliner. Susan Collins is from Maine. That's a blue state. She's a very moderate Republican too. That's to be expected.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying that belonging to a party absolutely means nothing to me. I've never wanted to belong to a party. And you just demonstrated. Yeah, and that's only two examples. There have been people. I mean, who was the guy? Specter, Arlen Specter. I remember him. He was the biggest, Republican under George Bush, and immediately switched parties when Obama became president. That's the reality. That's who they are. That's why there needed to be a Tea Party. That's why there need to be people like Steve Bannon. That's why there need to be people like Bernie Sanders. There's people like that on the Democratic side too. And the final topic here, because I have to go eat something, but your NAACP membership. Could you tell us a little about why you decided to join the NAACP? I'm going to try to keep this civil because this isn't Facebook, but go ahead.
I cast a very, 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 very wide net in life, generally speaking, and by associating and listening to and working with people from the far left when it comes to race relations, it again allows you to reach common ground and unify people. Because trying to do something to improve race relations is the reason I'm in politics in the first place. That's why I joined the NAACP. If they do something I don't agree with, I won't support them.
Okay, so here's a couple of things that they did. Have you heard of an organization called Think Progress or Media Matters for America?
I have. I don't know that. Aren't they very progressive?
Well, they're connected directly to Hillary Clinton,
Okay.
and the NAACP partnered with them I think this was in 2012, to talk about, they began a campaign to paint the Tea Party as a new hate group.
I would not agree with that. No.
Okay, so that's one thing. You have, this is Human Events. What the hell did they just do here? One second. Sorry, Alex.
I'm pretty sure Think Progress is radical, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so in March 2008, ABC News revealed that Barack Obama's pastor, Jeremiah Wright, had preached that African Americans should sing not God Bless America,
I've heard that.
God Damn America, that 9/11 proved that America's chickens are coming home to roost, and that the U.S. government invaded AIDS. Well, that would make sense. The following month, on April 28th, 2008, the NAACP's Detroit chapter honored the Reverend Jeremiah Wright as a keynote speaker at a massive dinner.
Why?
So, what do you mean why? They just did.
Okay, they let him speak.
So, a keynote speaker at one of their dinners. So, you know, the keynote speaker is usually a guy who kind of represent that. I mean, Milo got.
Jeremiah Wright is a controversial person, but he's seen as a leader in the black community. So I mean, do I agree with the stuff he says? No, but why silence him?
Yeah, but why would you stand as part of an organization that holds him as a keynote speaker? I mean, you have to find some common ground with somebody, and you're saying you're casting a wide net. So can you cast a wide net to accept some of the views promulgated by Jeremiah Wright?
Not accept the views, but I would listen to them.
No, but you have him as the keynote speaker. That implies that the organization supports what he says.
Not always.
So a keynote speaker in an event, you know what that means, right?
Yes, I do. Hold on. That could simply mean that Jeremiah Wright is a prominent figure in U.S. politics that is popular with the black community. So they're going to let him.
He was not very popular before 2008.
I have to ask too. What did Jeremiah Wright speak about? Did he go out and say some divisive, hateful message like he did with the sermon that you just quoted, or did he go and say something unifying and good? I don't know enough about it. I can't just assume that it was something awful.
Well, you joined an organization that has this person as a keynote speaker. Okay, so this is another one. Louis Farrakhan, who teaches that an evil scientist named Yaqub created white people and claimed to have been abducted in a UFO and has made a mountain of anti-Semitic utterances. He was invited to participate in a leadership summit with the NAACP in 1997. So, you know, actually, Louis Farrakhan, I kind of look at as more of an entertainment figure personally, but I mean, this is the type of guy that he's basically got you know, full access to the NAACP leadership. So you want to say that you like being a part of an organization that fraternizes with that type of guy?
That's not all they do. That was one event. I do not. Again, I don't like Louis Farrakhan, but he just basically helped do an event with them once.
No, but you were just talking about. I mean, we were talking about Steve Bannon, who you consider. I mean, okay, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but would you consider him an extremist?
Yes.
Well, why do you consider him an extremist and not these people that the NAACP?
Yeah, but I wouldn't denounce somebody who did an event with Steve Bannon because Bannon is an extremist. I denounce Bannon just like I denounce Louis Farrakhan or Jeremiah Wright.
Okay, so Stephen Bannon was the keynote speaker at the Republican National Convention next time. Would you consider that an extremist nod for the GOP?
Maybe, probably. The Republican National Convention is a much bigger than an event going on in Michigan. Let me give you a more adequate example. What if Steve Bannon was the keynote speaker at the Tennessee Republican dinner? Because that's a state chapter. It's not the national chapter, right? So it's a little smaller level, and I would not appreciate that. But I would probably go because that's diversity of thought for one that you're entertaining. And I wouldn't denounce the whole Republican Party because they made a mistake, like giving Bannon that kind of platform.
Yeah, but it's one thing to. I'm also in support of having people have freedom of speech and being able to speak wherever they want. That's different from joining an organization that hosts these people and has them as keynote speakers.
How
Those are two
often was
different
Louis
things.
Farrakhan a keynote speaker for an NAACP? It was one time.
No, I mean I've brought here multiple instances, and this isn't me. This is Human Events, which is a mainstream conservative newspaper.
And that in itself has an agenda because mainstream conservatives hate the NAACP because they misunderstand them.
No, but what has the NAACP done lately to advance the cause of racial healing? It hasn't done anything. In fact,
Let me tell you a few things they're doing in my community. One, we're trying to get a memorial built at the walking bridge in honor of a black man that was lynched because he was falsely accused of rape.
Okay, so what does the memorial do? How does that bring
It
together
creates
people?
awareness because so many people
Awareness. It does what? Awareness does what? That's not bringing
it tells
people
people
together.
who are going down the walking bridge somebody was lynched here because nobody knows that. It's very
Yes. So what? I have, and I'm not diminishing the issue of lynching because I'm against lynching.
right.
But I know people, for example, people in my family that they're very into Holocaust remembrance, and they're not letting go of the Germans. They're always saying, oh, the fucking Germans, they shot our, they killed our entire families. But remembrance and commemoration and all that, yeah, they're important, but that does not foster reconciliation as such.
No, it does. It creates a dialogue,
No, it doesn't create a dialogue.
especially when it comes to
If
black
you
and
look at
white
what
people in a
if you
place
look at
like
what
that.
they've been doing with this Confederate monument thing, they've been focusing entirely on
They're wrong about
symbolics.
the Confederate monuments, by the way.
Well, I mean, why don't you bring that up at one of the chapter meetings then?
I'm not gonna go and cause trouble like that. I'm
No,
a
but
white person.
you're there to represent you. You're there as Alex, and you're trying to influence the organization that you're a part of, right? So if you think that they're doing something that's incorrect, and you're talking about commemorating these lynching victims, which I think is okay. I don't think it's bringing reconciliation. But then they're going and saying, oh, we can't have these Confederate monuments. We can't have these ceremonies at Confederate stadiums then, or cemeteries, sorry, not stadiums. I think that you're at cross purposes with them in reality, because you're basically saying, I'm going to go there. I'm just going to blend in while I'm at the NAACP, and when I leave the NAACP meeting, I'm going to put on the real Alex hat, and that's basically the way I see that type of mindset. That's why I don't join any organizations.
The goal is unity.
There is no unity here, because if you have unity, that means basically what does it mean? Okay, unity basically means there's people that are in the same room, and what? I mean, fill in the blank there.
And are working together for something, for what they believe.
No, but what is it? What are they working together
in
for?
this case, what we need to be doing is talking about racism, talking about racial issues, and instead of just sweeping the problem under the rug, we need to address it.
No,
And
but I just
there are
brought cases of
conversations
the
we need to have.
NAACP tolerating racism among its speakers, and you're willing to sweep that under the rug. So if they don't want us to sweep racism under the rug, which I'm fine with, why are you content to sweep their racism under the rug?
I bet you I can find members of the NAACP, other members who are against what's going on with Louis Farrakhan and with Jeremiah Wright.
No, I'd probably say that they wouldn't say that in public. You have here on April 8th, 1994, it says they invited Maulana Karenga, the person who originated Kwanzaa, who went to prison for kidnapping and torturing 2 women. They invited him to a secret meeting called a deliberate mechanism for communication and interrelations between representative leaders of the progressive community and the NAACP, with the inclusive mission of the Ben Chavis administration and the, well, anyway, they invited a lot of these. Do you know what black identity separatism is?
No.
Well, it's the equivalent of the Richard Spencers on the black side. So that there's Leonard Jeffries, who calls the white people ice people, and he believes in melanin theory, meaning that your intelligence goes up the more melanin that you have. They invited him to a secret meeting to coordinate strategy. So, and then you had Karenga, who he was a black radical in the 70s, who went to prison.
That's right. I do agree with all.
Well, but that's what the NAACP. They may have a public face. Have you heard of the organization CAIR, CAIR?
I have, yes.
Well, I think
Council of American Relations with Muslims or something.
American Islamic Relations, yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at all these organizations that pop up, you have CAIR, you have GLAD, you have the NAACP, the ADL, which is a Jewish organization that I oppose. They are all organizations that they have a public face where they stand for diversity, but they don't really. They stand for diversity.
CAIR is a hate group. It's like the SPLC.
No, I think that CAIR and the NAACP have more in common than they have to differentiate themselves from each other.
They don't belong in the same group.
Well, why would you not say that an organization that invites people like Leonard Jeffries, who is a clear anti-white bigot, to a secret meeting to coordinate strategy? You don't think that that's a nefarious purposes meeting?
For all of these negative...
And this was at the national level, by the way.
Okay.
National.
For all of these negative meetings, I bet you could find another, for every one of them, I bet you can find another 100 positive ones.
No, but that's not the point, because if you're saying that, it's like if I'm saying, well, I have an ice cream shop, and in the back I sell heroin, so I still sell ice cream.
But they're not, and also these instances are about 20 years ago. It's not happening anymore.
Well, I mean, but everything that they're talking about isn't happening anymore either. The lynching isn't happening anymore.
And we're not protesting lynching. We're just trying to create awareness of what did happen in the past.
If you look at the NAACP, the majority of their activities here, I'll pull up here. This is just a news feed from Google.
You know what else the NAACP is doing? I bet you'll agree with this one. They're fighting for criminal justice reform because our prisons are overcrowded and minimum sentencing is very wrong, constitutionally speaking. Like, it's not government's role to be that big and lock people up for small drug crimes.
Yeah, that's the fact that they have a couple issues that might line up with what I believe doesn't mean that I would support joining that organization. That's I mean, there's viewpoints, and I'm Jewish, that I agree with the ADL on, but I think that they're a fraud of an organization, just like the NAACP. I think that there's a lot of groups that they've been raising their profile to represent identities, and there's the NAACP for the black identity, there's GLAD for the gays, there's CAIR for the Muslims, and they represent a political agenda for an elite class to divide Americans and to set them up along fault lines that are ideological. You saw earlier this year the NAACP denied, they called Jeff Sessions, who I'm not a fan of, a racist, and they supported, that here it says six NAACP protesters were arrested for occupying Jeff Sessions' office. Okay,
I don't agree with that. And
no, but you're part of this organization. You have to this whole thing where you try to deflect it and say, oh, it's part of a different chapter or whatever. The NAACP is coordinating a national campaign to delegitimize the Jeff Sessions as a office holder. Think about it this way, okay? When it's convenient for them, they say, oh, it's a small chapter of our organization. They don't really represent all of our views. Well, I've given you several instances where it's a national organization. In fact, the NAACP in the past, they awarded Sessions with, I don't know if the award really means anything.
The Alabama NAACP gave him an award for being a great civil servant.
Yeah, now the
I
national
understand the NAACP
NAACP
was
is.
opposing Jeff Sessions, but that was wrong. And as I told you earlier, when the NAACP does something I don't agree with,
So when
I
you go to a
will.
meeting and they talk about it, you don't raise an objection and say, why is our organization spreading lies, and why don't they criticize Jeff Sessions on his drug policy instead of making up lies? Don't you
If
think
it
that
came
undermines?
up in a meeting about Jeff Sessions, I would have stood up against that. That's a big deal.
What do you talk about in your meetings?
I haven't.
You don't have to reveal anything you're not allowed to talk about, but give an example at least.
Well, the ones we're planning on campus, we're trying to get this memorial built, and we're trying to educate people in criminal justice reform, and we're also trying to talk about like some. This isn't my committee, but some health issues going on in the Black community. That's okay.
Yeah, okay, so you're okay with belonging to an organization that spreads libels about a government official that could have this government official, Jeff Sessions, could have impact on the criminal justice system because he's the attorney general, but they're spreading lies about him. You don't think that that's detrimental to the cause? You're willing to take part in an organization that's
I was critical of that. I told you.
yeah, but were you critical at the organization meetings?
I was not part of the NAACP when Jeff Sessions was appointed.
No,
I
but
think
now that you've joined the organization, don't you want to make a difference within the organization? Or you?
Yes, and if Jeff Sessions were being appointed tomorrow, I would be different about it.
No, but you joined the organization after all these events. You didn't read up on all of these goings on where they're occupying his office, or they're there's this other one here. Here it is.
I saw the award where they gave him a good civil servant award.
Yeah, and they're denying that ever happened. So that's a dishonest statement.
But they're not. That award exists. There's a picture of it.
Yeah, so you're basically standing by the decision by the organization to flat out lie about Jeff Sessions.
I told you I was critical of it. Keep going back to it.
Okay, here we go. NAACP rallies behind Stephen Curry after Trump dissed him. That's from a couple of weeks ago. Now, remember that originally Curry said, well, I'm not really interested in going to the White House. I have nothing to look for there. So why would they rally behind a guy who got into the controversy himself? It wasn't Donald Trump that started it.
It kind of, well, Trump did not have to tweet what he did. He needs to be beyond that level.
Needs to be beyond what level?
Of going to Twitter to trash talk football players. And
yeah, but according to who? According to who does he have to be beyond that level?
That's just presidential. He doesn't legally have to. It just looks really silly of him.
Okay, there was a case when Harry Truman was president where his daughter was insulted by a reporter, and he basically threatened to kick the guy's ass. Harry Truman was a great president, wasn't he?
That is very different. Harry Truman was sticking up for his daughter. Donald Trump is calling people SOBs because they knelt for a national anthem. That's ridiculous.
No, he can say what I think that he can say whatever he wants as president.
He can, but there are times where he looks stupid when he does.
You can say that he looks stupid, but you can't argue with the fact that he's definitely expressed the views of millions of Americans that they would say the same thing to Steph Curry. Here it says NAACP.
Millions of Americans. He's the leader of millions of Americans. He needs to be above stuff.
There is no way to be above the fray when you're
there is. Look how classy Obama was. Obama.
Yeah, and he was a complete failure of a politician. Everything that he accomplished is being undone within a few months. It was all a charade. He had all of those advantages that you're talking about, being quote unquote above the fray and dignified and well spoken, and yet he accomplished so little. Don't you think that it's more important to accomplish things than to look presidential? Looking presidential doesn't necessarily mean that you accomplished much.
Obama accomplished quite a bit. It just happened in his first 2 terms.
Okay, name one thing besides Obamacare that he accomplished.
Dodd-Frank.
Yes, Dodd-Frank, a bill that is still considered, right? That you still have the entire progressive movement claiming that Dodd-Frank
did almost nothing to restrain Wall Street. Progressives consider it like one of the most, basically a fig leaf.
By the way, I don't agree with Dodd-Frank, but it was a bill that.
Yes, it was a bill.
Yeah.
That we can agree on. It was a bill, just like McCain-Feingold was a bill that solved nothing. Dodd-Frank was a bill that only complicated people's lives and did nothing. Okay, so here's another one.
Lilly
NAACP.
Fair Pay Act.
What's that?
Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act.
Okay, so that
the
one.
Recovery Act, that was huge. That got our economy going again. It came at great cost, but it did get it done.
So he bailed out Wall Street, basically.
The Recovery Act was not the Wall Street bailout. That was he gave out grants to people, basically, to anybody.
Okay, the national.
I would have voted against it, but that was a big accomplishment, and it did get the economy moving even.
So you're saying you're fine with him looking presidential, doing things that you don't agree with?
No, I'm not. I'm fine. I'm not fine with him looking presidential. The argument was that Obama did things, and I'm telling you what he did.
Yeah, and those were things that basically, after 8 years, progressives now consider him, real progressives consider him to have accomplished almost nothing.
He didn't accomplish almost nothing. He may not have accomplished what real progressives wanted, but he accomplished a lot of what he set out to do.
No, all the things he did were basically meaningless.
The argument was,
you know yourself that the Affordable Care Act that we're getting to was a house of cards that was built to fail. So
it wasn't built to fail. It was built to bail out, not to bail out, but to help insurance companies who donated to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that looking presidential is a bunch of bullshit. I would be fine with having a president that's basically like Randy, what's his name, Jesse Ventura, one of these raving lunatics, as long as he did the right thing and was able to get things done.
But again, the issue was not that Obama didn't get things done. The issue was that, the issue here is that Trump is acting like an idiot on Twitter, and Obama knew how to communicate with the world. And
yes, he knew how to communicate and deceive the world, and that's why you, who consider, I mean, I don't know why you consider yourself a Republican, because I can't stand by that party, but that's why he was able to hoodwink, along with the Republicans, the American people into the Iran nuclear deal. That's why he was able to hoodwink them into the Affordable Care Act. Those aren't accomplishments. Those are deceptions. They're falling apart as we speak. We got this other statement by the NAACP where they say President Trump's executive orders to kill the Affordable Care Act, and make no mistake, this action is intended to do exactly that, or a new low, even for the White House that has defended white supremacists, condoned sexual harassment, and lied to the public.
The NAACP said this.
Yes, this is Derek Johnson, interim president and CEO of the NAACP. As president of the United States, Donald Trump has a duty to uphold the rule of law, but in this case, it is disturbingly apparent that he is actually determined to sabotage it. Now, they didn't say the same thing about DACA. They didn't say the same thing about when President Obama pushed through all these other executive orders they did when he expanded the powers of the NSA. They never said a single thing about that. But now you've joined this organization very recently that they're claiming that he cavorts with white supremacists, that he condoned sexual harassment. I'd like to see evidence of it. You can talk all you want about it, and lied to the public. Okay, let's concede that. I mean, we can both agree that Trump has lied to the public on certain things, but you're joining an organization that's standing full chest out for the Affordable Care Act. So, I mean, can you really justify taking part in that?
Yes, I can. I told you, when they do something I don't like, I'm not going to agree with them.
No, but you're going to their meetings, and you're basically playing into their game of presenting this united front of people that eventually they're going to say, well, Alex, we're planning a protest tomorrow. We're going to protest in favor of upholding the Affordable Care Act. I mean, why would you not think that in the next week or so, with all this stuff that's going on with it, that they wouldn't propose something like that? What are you going to say then?
I would say, y'all go ahead. I'm not going. I don't agree with that.
No, but you would say, so then you joined an organization here that I'd say probably on current issues that are going on.
I care about black issues. The Affordable Care Act has nothing to do with the black community.
Well, why doesn't it? Why would you say that?
Besides raising their premiums, it's done nothing else.
So why is it the NAACP is speaking out on the Affordable Care Act? Are you saying
Because the NAACP has Democratic politicians at the top of it.
Oh,
that's why we reform it. That's why we make it something that's real about helping black issues and not a political game.
No, but I've asked you repeatedly, why don't you step up at the meetings and object to certain things that you know are incorrect with the NAACP's agenda?
Well, I would. I totally would. I didn't say I wouldn't do that.
No, but you have these meetings there. You're talking about a memorial there, okay? There's so many memorials around the country. You know what happens to memorials? Birds shit on them. That's what happens. That's what happens to memorials. Putting up a new memorial, that's just another place for pigeons to perch. Okay? I don't care what it signifies. I don't care what's the cause. You know, these people going and protesting in favor of keeping the Confederate memorials, in many cases, I don't think they cared about it until they were talking about tearing them down.
I don't support removing the most Confederate memorials. I think
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the people that are protesting.
We need to remove the statue of the KKK founder that's in our state capitol. But by move it to a museum, not destroy it. And
yeah, but you have a group that they are the NAACP. I wanted to. I mean, give me one policy position that they've recently promoted. Besides, I mean, you've already mentioned the criminal justice reform. So yeah, you've mentioned one policy position where you agree, but you don't think that their position when they condemn the attorney general for things that they know are incorrect, you don't think that their policy on criminal justice reform, it gets delegitimized by the fact that they're being dishonest and facetious when talking to the top law enforcement officer of the country?
That was wrong, and I would stand against that.
No, but you joined the organization to make a difference within. I mean, how are you exactly doing that when you're talking about memorials that in the grand scheme of things don't do anything to further any agenda? They just further, you know, Hillary Clinton, she sponsored 2 bills when she was in the Senate. They were both for renaming post offices. So is that an accomplishment?
No.
Well, those are 2 memorials. So that basically.
Yeah, but Hillary Clinton is a senator from New York. We're a local organization.
No, but you need to talk about tangible things that the organization is doing, not some symbolic issue that in the end people are not even going to pay attention to the memorial.
Well, we take it one issue at a time, and right now that's criminal justice reform. Okay,
what are you doing for criminal justice reform?
I'm also the chair of Young Americans for Liberty on my campus. We're going to partner with the 2 of them to try to we're going to build a little jail out of PVC pipes and tell people about prison overcrowding and how people have rights, and also about civil asset forfeiture. And we tie that to the NAACP because a lot of black fathers are in jail disproportionately. And you can take that and say, hey, if we restore the father to these kids, they're going to grow up in a much better way, statistically speaking.
Okay, how about the fact that the NAACP, so you consider yourself a, if I remember, you are a non-denominational Christian, right?
Yeah.
Are you aware that the NAACP passed a resolution in support of marriage equality?
Okay.
Do you have any comment on that based on your faith or your own personal positions?
They have the right to believe that. I don't have to agree.
So okay, so you're also dissenting on that note, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so
you can find a lot of things I'll disagree with the NAACP about, but I'll find a lot of things I'll like.
No, but you're a member. That's the difference. You can disagree with them, but when you're a member, you do have to. You can't just go and you have your member card and you say, you know what? I'll join your rally if I can hold this sign that says the exact opposite of what you say.
Or you just don't have to go to the rally. You can say, I don't agree with this. I'm not participating.
No, but then you have to reconcile the fact that you are not, you're basically, they don't create a half membership, Alex. Okay, it's not like I can say I'm a member because I stand with this organization on X and not Z, because they don't have different colors for the membership cards, right?
I'm a member of the Republican Party. I agree with them on 90% of the issues, but there are 10% of the ones I don't agree with.
Yeah, but the Republican Party, first of all, has substantial different factions within it. It's not a cohesive organization the same way the NAACP is.
But the NAACP can turn into something factional. You can have people that truly care about black issues, and then ones that care about pushing the Democrats' agenda, which is what a lot of the stuff you're reading me is doing.
No, but this is the difference between you have how many people in your group at the NAACP of Tennessee? I'm not going to mention what city you're in, but how many people actually agree with what you're talking about when you talk about, for example, lowering taxes or repealing the Affordable Care Act?
What do you mean? What? Say that again.
How many you have? We talked about the Affordable Care Act, right?
Yeah.
You think that they should repeal the Affordable Care Act?
Yes, because it's failing, not be.
So in the NAACP chapter, how many people agree with you on that?
I don't know. I haven't talked that much about it.
Okay, but yet the organization that you've joined has a clear stance that's in favor of keeping it, right? So
Yeah.
you can make an initial assumption that the majority of people will agree with the organization's policy, right?
Probably. If you educate them, they might change their mind if they see how much of a fail it has been.
Yeah, but this isn't the same as first of all, the NAACP, they don't choose their leadership in the same way as, let's say, they do in political parties. They have basically they have a board and they have trustees and all that. That it's not, you're not talking about a democracy. It's a private organization.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about changing it from within. That would mean that you'd have to climb the board, and let's wrap up in 5 minutes because I can see you're getting tired too, and I am. But all I'm trying to say here, and I know it got repetitive and it's getting, a little touchy because of the, I'm bringing up all these examples, and the NAACP, they represent today a black identity group that they're promoting an agenda that is fully consistent with the Obama administration. And for you to join the organization and claim, oh, I'm trying to change it from within, they're not an organization that is built to be changed from within. They're built to be guided from the top. They're a top-heavy organization. And you can say the same thing for the SPLC. You can say the same thing for the ADL, for GLAD. I call them the alphabet soup of politics. So all they do is they they organize these interest groups, and they have these leaders at the top that they direct people what to believe. I have a cousin, I think she's active in the ADL or one of those groups, and I know for a fact that the stuff that she's repeating is exactly that. It's repeated. So I think that you might think that the NAACP, you mentioned its good history of what is it, 95 years or so of activism in favor of civil rights, but organizations change. The SPLC, you could say the same thing. In the 80s and 90s, the SPLC was integral to fighting the Ku Klux Klan. And they've moved now to persecuting ex-Muslim activists and free speech leaders and men's rights activists like what's that, Karen Sloan or whatever her name is. And that's what happens because these groups are top heavy.
This is what needs to happen, and this is my goal. I'm in there because I keep those people close, and I want to unite. And if I sit here in my bubble and look and from the outside and say, NAACP is just another hate group, which I don't think it is, but if I just sit there and look at them that way, I'm not going to understand their side. I won't know how to best reach them, and I won't be able to unite these people with other Christian conservatives that will move forward for a real change that needs to happen, such as criminal justice reform and a restoration of the fatherhood and the family to the black community.
Yeah, but why would that have? Why does the NAACP have anything to do with Christian conservatism?
Because in the end, the Christian conservatism is the answer to a lot of these problems.
Yeah, but
And
that's your opinion. That's not the NAACP's opinion.
okay, so we slowly changed the NAACP's opinion,
So
but the
that's what this,
NAACP
you know,
is no, the
I,
NAACP is going to give me an idea of what liberal black people who really want change are thinking, and I'll know how to better reach them because I really want change too. Because me seeing race relations really the way they are now really bothers me.
no, but what you're doing is you're perniciously joining a group to promote your own. I don't know if it's to promote, but to further your own personal religious agenda. Okay, which I'm fine with you doing
Right.
in general, but when you go into an organization and they have an agenda that says X, Y, and Z, which I've spelled out, by the way, I've spelled out the NAACP's real agenda, and you're saying, no, I'm going to promote the Alex agenda. You're not going to be successful. In fact, that's basically what's happened in certain groups in the UK. If you look at the UK Labour Party, they were infiltrated by far left groups that are much further left than the Labour Party.
Labor is socialist, isn't it?
Sure, but they were never explicitly communist. Now they've been basically superseded by a group within it. You can look it up. It's called Momentum.
Mm-hmm.
That they've aimed to change them from within. Now that is a democratic movement. There was hope in the Labor Party for those people to further their cause. I'm just talking about strategy here. I'm not talking about morality.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in your case, you're saying you have a Christian conservative agenda, but you're joining a group that's explicitly not Christian or conservative. So I don't see where they have any overlap, or they might have a little overlap, but you can't claim, oh, I'm joining the NAACP, but I don't agree with all of these items on their agenda, which I've mentioned. Instead, I'm going to promote all these agenda items on mine. So, I really don't see where your end game is.
I think this is a great way to unify people. This is a great way to understand a side that I'm not really a part of, and I'm trying to understand them. And I think if you can convince, I won't be able to change the whole NAACP, obviously, but if I can convince the people at my local NAACP about the best way to change things locally, to work with local black families, a lot can happen. And people there know I'm conservative, and people there have a lot of respect for me regardless, so far.
Yeah, but I've seen people, and you've probably seen me arguing with them, that they think that anybody who even says the slightest criticism of the NAACP, they're a white supremacist.
And
So
those guys are wrong. I don't agree with them on that. And you were arguing with two of my friends on Facebook, Dee and Walt. Dee and Walt have awesome hearts. They're great people, but they're also liberal, politically speaking. They're still
they're so liberal that they had transphobic insults at me. So that's how liberal that they were. So I mean, I didn't want to bring up, so whoever heard their names.
You notice I didn't. I stayed out of that. I did not.
No, I'm not trying to out your friends, but the fact of the matter is that they are people that they exhibit all the flaws of the liberal agenda. Okay, and for you to keep their company and then claim, oh, I'm actually conservative within the NAACP, well, then you try to go and say, well, President Trump is not being presidential, but you're part of an organization that you don't even agree with the majority of its policy points there. So,
but I share the goals of that organization.
No, the goals of the organization, when they have people like Leonard Jeffries at their, how are you to even know what the goals are?
The goals of the organization are to improve life in the black community. I have those goals too.
Yeah, that's the most nebulous and vague goal that I've ever heard. I mean, I could
to improve racial relations. Those are goals that I've got.
Yeah, but your organization, the NAACP, has done so much to undermine race relations that I mean, how many examples do I have to bring up before you acknowledge that they've been a detriment to their own goals?
I don't think they have. I can find you plenty of examples. Without the NAACP, we'd still have poll taxes and segregation.
Yeah, but that was the NAACP several generations ago.
Right, and what you're telling me is also the NAACP from
by the same argument, you should join the Democratic Party, Alex, because in the
no.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could never join the Democratic Party.
No, but why? The Democratic Party during the Cold War, they fought the Soviet Union just like the Republicans. Maybe not just like, but they were involved in containing the Soviet Union. And you believe that that was a just cause. So why don't you join the Democratic Party? I mean, their legacy involves defeating Nazi Germany during World War II.
The Republicans' legacy involves freeing the slaves.
And yeah, but the Democratic Party, you have FDR, who he fought Nazism.
FDR was one of the worst presidents ever, and he
defeated the Japanese.
He pissed on the Constitution.
Yeah, but he accomplished all these good things. So why don't you join the Democratic Party? It's the same argument. We're arguing about the NAACP today. The fact that you keep
FDR's end goal was more government. My end goal in the end is less government and more individual responsibility.
Yeah, and the NAACP is claiming that Jeff Sessions is racist and in some cases he's a member of the Ku Klux Klan, but you're still a member of that organization, and that's today. That's today, yeah. Alex. So
the NAACP,
you're leaning on the accomplishments of over 50 years ago in order to justify your participation in an organization today that you're ignoring their actions today. You're ignoring their actions. I don't think I mean, it doesn't sound like you're really objecting to them very vocally.
The NAACP's end goal is improvement.
Yeah, but based on all these things that I've brought up, are they really furthering that goal by being a lying and dishonest organization?
A lot of the things you brought up, no, they're not. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to fix things.
Okay, so you said that their organizational goals are to improve the black community. So I'll read you this organizational goal. Hold on. Let's see here about us. To support free enterprise, freedom of religion, and freedom of expression, protect civil rights of all Americans regardless of faith, support domestic policies that promote civil rights, diversity, and freedom of religion, oppose domestic policies that limit civil rights, permit racial, ethnic, or religious profiling, infringe on due process, or that prevent X group and others from participating fully in American civic life. Do you support all those goals, Alex?
Yeah, they sound fine to me.
Okay, so then you should join CARE.
No.
No, but that's what they say on their website. No, that's their stated goal. The same thing. You said that it doesn't matter. You said their stated goal is to improve life in the black community, and you support it. That's their
NAACP are not in the same boat. CARE is
it's the same thing. It's just a different packaging.
No, it's not.
Different packaging. It's the same thing. You said, oh, Bob Corker voted against the bill. Well, he made it so that his vote doesn't matter. So all the examples that I keep bringing up, you take the most superficial aspect of it, and you say, oh, that's why I do it. That's why I do it, because the NAACP claims that it supports that. Well, that's because it's a front organization. It's a front organization. So you're supporting a front organization in order to promote your own personal agenda. So, I mean, you know, I guess I'll let you have the last word, because obviously I've yacked a lot and I do want to go. So you have 2 minutes. Say whatever you want, NAACP, Corker, whatever you want. And then we'll close and have a good night.
Okay, I'll finish it. My goal in the end is to improve race relations. I calculated the risks of this a lot, and I think this will really help in the long run. I don't agree with that organization and everything. When I disagree with them, I won't participate in what they're doing. But when they do something right, I will definitely join them. Also, before that, completely off topic. As you know, Facebook Zook our other 98% page. And I mean, that's pretty much censorship of free speech. But since it doesn't look like we're going to get that back, I have started a new page called Leftist Logic. And we go after the other 98%, Occupy Democrats, being liberal, everybody. Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren. You name it, we'll go after them.
So what's the tag on Facebook for that?
Leftist logic. I will send you a link. Give me 1 second. But I would love it if people went and followed our page. I would love to even air some of our podcasts on there sometime.
All right, so I put a link and in the chat for that. You can find Alex there. I have Bold Like a Leopard, which is also on Facebook, and you guys can catch Alex there. They can message you there too, right?
They sure can. And if people like to make dank memes and are interested in being admins, shoot me a message.
All right, and anything else? Are you in? I mean, we obviously mentioned Young Americans for Liberty and the NAACP. Any other websites or anything you want to mention before we go off air?
Yeah, well, on this page, we're not going to get zuked. I'm only debunking memes that I've already seen. I'm not going to be out there posting articles and super controversial stuff, because even though I believe it's okay, Facebook doesn't, and they go after conservatives big time. So that's the type of memes I'm trying to make. I'm doing YAL. I'm VP of College Republicans, and I am a member of the NAACP. I'm a very unique Republican, so yeah.
Yes, he is. And for everything with Alex Ioannidis, you can find him at Leftist Logic on Facebook. Please leave your comments in the comment section, obviously. And everybody have a great night, and God bless.
Thank you.